Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bitter Rivals podcast, episode 85. I am your host, Avery Roche, with co-host Gitano Gallo, coming at you once again with a Monday episode. Or will we get this up tonight, or are we going to go over?
Yeah, it'll be up on Monday.
Okay, so we'll put it up tonight. It'll be released on Monday. It's being recorded Monday at around, what time is it right now? 8:19. So, yeah, we had a busy weekend, which is why we couldn't come at you, but we're coming at you now. So, as you know, I think the lead of this episode is going to be the Ryan O'Reilly to Toronto news. So if you haven't heard, the Toronto Maple Leafs traded with the St. Louis Blues 4 draft picks, including a first, second, third, and fourth. And there was also the Minnesota Wild in there getting one of those picks for Ryan O'Reilly, Noel Acciari, and a prospect whose name is escaping me right now. I think he's more of an AHL guy.
Yeah.
But so I believe it was the first, second, and fourth went to St. Louis. They retained 50%, and the third went to Minnesota, and they retained another 25%. So the Leafs are paying Ryan O'Reilly $1.875 million, which is really good, really good.
It's an impressive trade from Dubas. I'll give him that.
Yes, and the Noel Acciari throw-in's a little bit of an underrated throw-in, I think.
Yeah, I don't know too much about him. I know he's got his first goal the other night, but
he did score. But that's not really what he's there for. He's a guy who's going to throw more hits than anybody on the team currently does. He's somebody you can trust defensively. He's another option at center, which is huge. He can kill penalties, which is huge. And that's the throw-in. Now we're getting to Ryan O'Reilly, who has been top 5 in Selke voting for each of the last 5 seasons. Won the Conn Smythe and the Stanley Cup in 2019. And I think we can just agree is regarded as one of the best defensive forwards in the National Hockey League. This year, he's had a down year.
Yeah,
we know that. He's also wasn't playing on a very good hockey team. So
yeah, I think that's a bit of that.
There's a bit of that too. And Ryan O'Reilly's getting older. He's 32 years old, but didn't pay a very high price for him, and he's only on the books for $1.875. I think the deal, you've already touched on it. I think the deal is a huge W. Like, I think it's just to me, the big thing was giving up draft picks and not prospects, because I think a lot of people want our prospects. Guys like Matthew Nyes, Topi Niemola, even Nick Robertson, who I don't even know if you can consider a prospect anymore. But that's the pool of players that teams are going after. And for us to not have to give up any of those guys, we gave up a couple of AHL players and picks, and I don't think anybody currently in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization does or should care about a late first-round pick, a second, a third, and a fourth. You know what I mean? That's something that might come to fruition in 27, 28. We should care about 2023. You know what I mean? So I think they're in a good spot right now to do more damage, I think, is kind of what Kyle Dubas was trying to set up and what he was successful in setting up. Because now let's say we do make a prospect trade for maybe a solidifying piece in the top 4 defensively, maybe a guy like Jakob Chychrun. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but let's just hypothetically, now you have prospects that you can use in that deal, right? Because you didn't have to give them up to shore up your top 6 forwards, which is awesome. I think he really, really came out on top. My understanding is that Ryan O'Reilly asked to be traded to the Toronto Maple Leafs, which obviously decreased the price of Ryan O'Reilly because he wanted to go one place and one place only. Good old Ontario boy wanted to go back home and play for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So I'm really excited. It's got me excited to watch Leaf games again. We've talked about it in previous years on this show. We'll talk about it in years in the future on this show. This is the time of year where it gets really, really, really boring, especially in a league that we're in, the league that we're in now, because everybody already knows where they're going to be come April. The teams that aren't in the playoffs for the most part know that they're not going to be in the playoffs. The teams that are in the playoffs know they are going to be in the playoffs, and that's where we're facing. Pardon?
And who they're facing in the playoffs already.
Exactly. So I don't. It's hard to get excited for games sometimes, I think, is what I'm trying to say. So this has really pumped some joy back into watching Leafs hockey for me, and that's what I'm most appreciative for right now. It was.
How much term does O'Reilly have left on this deal? Just
this year, I believe. Yeah, and I would like to see him re-sign long-term on a similar kind of in a similar situation that Mark Giordano kind of took his he took a very, very small amount. I don't think O'Reilly's going to take that small of an amount. But if Dubas can get him signed for, let's say, 3-4 years at $2 or $3 million, I think that is ideal. I like that's the perfect addition, the perfect deadline addition. And actually, it wasn't the deadline addition. That's one of the things that I wanted to point out that I thought was a great thing about this deal is that it wasn't on the deadline. It gives the Leafs and Sheldon Keefe specifically a lot more time to decide where O'Reilly fits. Right now, he's playing second line center with Tavares and Marner on the wing. But now, because you made this trade in mid-February rather than at the deadline, you have a couple weeks of extra time to go, well, maybe we throw him on the top line with Matthews and Nylander. Maybe we throw him on the third line and have him center his own line, Ryan O'Reilly. These are all things that we can do. And that flexibility and having the time to use that flexibility, I think, is a really, really key piece of this edition. And that's what makes it different from some of the previous deadline acquisitions that Dubas has made is, first of all, I think there's a chance to re-sign him reasonably long-term. And second of all, I think there's a lot of opportunities for him to fit into this lineup, and there's a lot of time to take those opportunities to see where he fits and where he's going to be most effective, I think. And that's really important. So,
all right. I feel like we have to talk about last Saturday's game.
Yeah, the one that you bailed out on because you were going to see Ant-Man and the Wasp. You got to.
Bruh, I bought the movie tickets like a month ago.
Well,
I'm sorry I didn't check my calendar that far ahead.
That is your problem.
Absolutely, that was my fault. But anyways.
Anyway, the Leafs.
Feel like I didn't miss much.
Leafs and Habs played on Saturday. Ryan O'Reilly's debut. He had an assist. I believe he was 12 for 14 on the draws, 6 shots, 2 hits in 16 minutes of ice time. That's all anybody was paying attention to. We won the game 5-1. The Leafs beat the Habs. Obviously, if you were watching that game, which I'm assuming you were if you're listening to this podcast, you would already know that game was won by the Toronto Maple Leafs. But it was a heck of a game for one team. And Montreal, it was nice to see Joseph Woll just keep racking up his win total against AHL teams. I think that's where we were at with that game.
Speaking of AHL teams, Raphael Harvey-Pinard is at 7 goals in 12 games. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to be like a superstar or anything in the league, but like, he's kind of turning into an NHL player, which is great to see.
Who?
The guy who actually scored on you guys.
Is it the guy who scored the 1 goal on us?
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's funny.
Yeah. But no, for the Habs, it's just basically surviving until deadline day, hoping a couple of guys get healthy so they can get shipped out. Sean Monahan is hopefully back in the lineup this week. Hopefully we can get him at least a couple games in so he has some value at the deadline. He was kind of around November, December, people thought that he would be like a big piece for the Habs to move, that, a centerman like him who can put up points, plays a good game, like 200-foot game. He'd be super valuable at the deadline. Probably get us a first or some, high-end prospects. But he's been out since basically the middle of December. Hasn't played a game since. So we're hoping he gets back in just so he can get some value.
That's been the issue with him his whole career, though. Am I wrong in saying that?
Not particularly. So his last, I think it was 1.5 years, 2 years, he had a hip injury that kept him out for most of the season. This is a foot injury, so it's not the same thing. Like the hip was solved.
I just meant like injuries in general.
Yeah. But it's a tough one because you want him back healthy so we can fucking ship him out, because there's not that he has no value to us, but like he's a free agent in the summer, so like what the fuck's the point? And then there's guys like Joel Edmondson, who's been linked with your Toronto Maple Leafs. Hopefully he gets back healthy. Get him or David Savard shipped out. And
I was actually seeing some interest. I was seeing some interest in David Savard. That would be an interesting name to keep an eye on for this deadline here in Montreal. I was even hearing rumors that the Leafs might be interested in adding him just for back end depth.
Yeah, and I mean, if Ken Hughes is his whole philosophy is, if the price is right, we'll move a guy. So like, I don't know what the Leafs have in terms of picks and prospects to offer and what Hughes kind of values him at. Because he cost Tampa a first and a high-end prospect when he went from Columbus to Tampa the year they won the Cup, second one. So I
That's
mean, like
interesting.
he's a guy that he's got that playoff experience. He's a solid depth guy. His contract isn't terrible. I want to say it's probably in and around the 4 million mark, which is,
Age?
reasonable for late 20s, maybe early 30s, not even.
Savard? Okay. I thought he was
Give me
older
a
than
second.
that. Maybe it's the beard.
Let's see what we got here. Yeah. So yeah, he's a guy. He's got a cup in Tampa.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So he's 32, and he's on.
Okay, so he's the same age as O'Reilly, actually.
Yeah, he's on about 4.5 right now, and I don't know if that includes bonuses or any other stipulations in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's someone I expect to be shipped out. I mean, I wouldn't be upset if we didn't trade him, but I do expect one of him or Edmondson to be gone for sure.
Yeah, and that's just the nature of being a bottom-dwelling team at this point in the season, right? Anybody worth anything is going to go, especially if they're on an expiring contract or they have a juicy deal or they're
not
much anybody
everyone worth anything.
Sorry?
Not everyone worth anything, because I mean, there still are the untouchables like the Caulfield, Suzuki, Doc.
I meant older guys. You're right.
Yeah,
I should have said that, but yes.
Yeah.
Anybody over the age of 30 worth anything. Let's say that. Yeah. And Sean Monahan, I don't think, is over the age of 30. So
I think he's like 28, 29.
So even as you approach 30. But yeah, and the Leafs and the Habs are two teams in two completely different positions right now. One team is making a cup run and one team is taking a step back and really hoping for some lottery balls to fall a certain way.
It's disappointing. The Florida Panthers have remembered how to play hockey recently.
Yeah.
Which is kind of shitty.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for you guys. To be honest with you,
it's
they
still
want
going to be a relatively high first pick. Like, it's still going to be
for what the deal was for getting rid of, who was it again? Ben Sherratt. Yeah, it's going to turn out to be a high return for Ben Sherratt. Absolutely. Yeah. Because was it not a prospect as well?
Yeah, we got somebody else in there. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who it was, but
very interesting. So now that we've kind of gone over Leafs Habs, let's talk about some other workings from around the league. So let's get some thoughts on what you're thinking about all of these guys sitting out for trade-related reasons.
It's weird because the NHL hasn't done this before. It's very this is very new for the league. And we know load management in the NBA and stuff like that.
Well, we've seen it before when it's there's an imminent deal. We've seen that.
When it's they're finishing off the paperwork. Yeah, the guy's going to sit out. But the Chychrun thing, he hasn't played in a week now.
Yeah, that's a problem. That's a big time problem. Who's the other one? Gavrikov. Is it not Gavrikov out of Columbus also is sitting out significant time?
I did not know that he was sitting out. I know he was someone very high up on trade bait lists, but I did not realize that he is sitting out.
And Tyler Mott, also in Ottawa, it was either yesterday or today, he was announced as sitting out for trade-related reasons.
Interesting.
Showed up at the rink for practice and got told to go home.
Did he not? Was he not involved in that deal that the Sens just made for Gauthier?
Oh, yes. Gauthier, yes, I forgot that deal was made. You are 100% correct. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, yeah.
So that makes sense. Imminent trade.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but this Chychrun and Gavrikov sitting out for trade-related reasons, that's just not the NHL. There's going to be something to be said about that, I think, at the next owners' meeting. Let's be honest. Come on. Yeah. Because it takes the integrity of the game out of it, too, when you have players sitting for trade-related reasons, in my opinion. What if you're a playoff team and you're playing a team, and one night they have Gavrikov, the next night they just arbitrarily pull him out for fun? It's just it takes away the integrity of individual matchups and the overall league. No,
I think so, but the other side of that is, if you're a team negotiating for a player, you don't want him anywhere fucking near game. because all it takes is one fucking, a fucking loose skate blade, a fucking just a little slip, anything. He's out hurt. Now you don't get your player. The team who, in this case, Arizona, they can't move that player because now he's hurt. And now, it all went to shit when you could have just had him in the press box. And again, 10 days or however long Chychrun's been sitting now is ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. That is, that is a little fucked up. But, I think there's got to be some sort of if they announce that a trade is gonna, a guy's sitting for trade related reasons, there's got to be maybe a 5-day limit to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely understand where you're coming from on that. I think, yeah, and it's just not the NBA. That's as close as I can get to, what I'm trying to say here. It's not the
absolutely.
NBA. The NHL cannot go down that road. Welcome back to the Bitter Rivals podcast. After a few technical difficulties, we have returned to the screen here. So let's get into a couple of trade-related things. I believe before we left the break, we were talking about trade-related reasons or people being left out of games for trade-related reasons. So let's talk about guys that are going to get traded. Let's talk about teams' needs. We just kind of dissected what the Habs are all about this trade deadline. So let's talk about what the Leafs are all about. Let's give it to me. What's the fill in the blank?
The fill in the blank was, now with the acquisition of Ryan O'Reilly, the Leafs should do blank at the deadline.
So I've been seeing a lot of people say that they should strengthen their goaltending. That's a position of need just because of Matt Murray and his injury history and the fact that he's currently injured, and that it's Ilya Samsonov. And but after that, you have Joseph Woll and Jakob Chychrun, who are good goaltenders, but they're not NHL goaltenders. It's that simple. So I've heard a lot of people say that we need to shore up that position. I disagree. I think Samsonov's been good enough, and I think that Murray is a good backup, and that's what he is right now. Ilya Samsonov is the starting goaltender. He's the best goaltender that we have in the system, and he's a really good guy, really good goaltender. Oh my, how blunt he is absolutely kills me. So he should not have played in the game yesterday. It should have been either Chychrun or Woll on a back-to-back. Ilya Samsonov had the straight-up runs. He had the straight-up runs, and he was asked about it, and he was quoted as saying, "Tough day on the shitter, So...
Put it on a t-shirt. Put it on a t-shirt.
The way that he's talking about that makes me think he probably shouldn't have been playing in that hockey game. And
no,
he looked horrible against Chicago last night. Good little bridge, because that's the next thing I wanted to talk about, and that I'm sure you wanted to talk about, Gitano, was Patrick Kane and his availability, his value at this point.
So, because you've played them twice in the last few days, right? It was once last week and then once yesterday, right?
Yep, destroyed them in the first game. Patrick Kane was basically invisible. We then traded for Ryan O'Reilly after lots of rumors that we were in on Patrick Kane. Trade for Ryan O'Reilly. Play them again. Patrick Kane scores his 9th career hat trick and gets 4 points. So, you can imagine the field day that Toronto media had with that.
Yeah, well, so let's go back to that first game, because he played like shit. He was horrible. Did not show up.
Yeah, he was horrible.
And then also skipped out on media availability, took the fine for that. And then, Toronto picks up Ryan O'Reilly. Probably don't have the resources or real need for Patrick Kane at this point. I mean, obviously, if Dubas can swing it, I don't think you say no, but I think it's probably not a priority anymore.
Yeah, well, definitely, especially now with the O'Reilly, there's no way, and there's no reason for it, right? To go after a guy like that. But before O'Reilly, I don't think there was much reason for it. So, there you go. I would have liked to have seen it, because who doesn't want Patrick Kane on their team? But I don't think that was the kind of player that Dubas was going to go after. So, I don't know. I don't think there's many landing spots for him anymore. I've heard a couple. I've heard Dallas and Vegas are a couple of landing spots for Patrick Kane. I don't know how Vegas is always in on guys. We say this all the time, but I don't get it.
Yeah, and it's because like aren't they like not doing great this year either?
Oh, I know.
Not doing terrible, but not doing great.
So what do you say his value is? And by that, I don't want to give you to give me an exact trade value, like what you would offer for him. I want to know what you think he is at this point. Do you think he is your, like, 26, 27, closer to the 26, 27-year-old Patrick Kane, or closer to the Patrick Kane that we've seen so far this year, minus the last couple weeks?
It's tough because, so if you're looking at it as a straight rental, this is a guy who can score goals in the playoffs, has the cups, has that experience, is a leader in that locker room. So he's going to bring that to your locker room. And that is worth, something, right?
Yeah.
But the biggest question is going to be his health. Because yes, he can be a great leader in your room and have that experience, but if he's not on the ice and in your room, using that experience and that leadership, then there's kind of not a point. You know what I mean? Like, and especially because I'm sure Chicago is not going to let him go cheap. I'm going to guess that they're at least expecting a first and a prospect back, like bare minimum.
Yeah, and especially if they're going to retain salary, which I think they would have to do with any of the contenders, right? Like, he's an $11 million player. They're going to have to retain at least half of that.
Yeah, like, and I wouldn't even be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if a third team gets involved, similar to Minnesota in the Ryan O'Reilly deal, to just take draft picks and pick up some cap. But yeah, and then, it also depends what he wants to do long term. I know he was really set on the Rangers. I think he really wanted that deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if a team's not going to get him long term, if he just says straight up like, I'm not going to re-sign with you in the summer, but like I'll move to you for a playoff run, like let's just say, I'm just picking randomly here, no rumors or anything, just say Colorado. Goes, I'll go play in Colorado for a couple months, go on a playoff run, and then I'm gonna sign somewhere else. Like, I think that deal costs them significantly less than if, let's just say, New York had been more in on him and committed to it, and he wanted to sign there long term. I think that would have cost them a lot more.
Yeah, no, I think you're bang on with that, and it's going to be interesting to see if he remains a Chicago Blackhawk for the remainder of this season. And I don't know. I don't know who really has, like you said, what it's going to take to get him out of there, especially with that retention.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to be an expensive pay for somebody. And like you said, in Patrick Kane, from my understanding, Friedman's been yelling it on Sportsnet. He's not happy that people are saying that he's got hip issues. But he does. That's something that has plagued him, and he is pissed about it. Like, man, like, you can't ask somebody to take a $5.5 million gamble on you. Let's just say at 50% retained, a $5.5 million gamble on you, and spend that cap space on you rather than somewhere else, not knowing if you're going to be able to play for them until they're hoping the Stanley Cup playoffs, like the Stanley Cup finals. Seriously.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's tough because you know what a healthy Patrick Kane is. A healthy Patrick Kane is 30 to probably around this point, probably like 25 to 30 goal a season guy.
Let me just add a quick caveat to that. A healthy Patrick Kane not playing for the 22-23 Blackhawks. Yeah.
Because he's the shining diamond in the turd right now.
Yes.
But he's going to be a 30 odd goal scorer for the next probably couple years still on a decent team. And like, he's going to be so much better than we are seeing him right now.
Yes. I think that's
so like, it might be worth the $5.5 million gamble. It might be. Yeah.
It's just, I don't know if teams are in positions to make $5.5 million gambles at this point. Like I said, who? Like, the two teams I've heard are Dallas and Vegas. Like, I just don't see any feasibility for anybody else.
Yeah, like I'm looking at like projected cap space, and like literally like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 teams have $0 in projected cap space.
Exactly.
Like that's nearly half the league. You take Chicago out of there because they already have him. Like, and you look at the teams with cap space: Buffalo, Arizona, Anaheim, Detroit, Chicago, Ottawa. Like they can afford him.
Whoa. Hear me out. Buffalo.
I mean,
he's from Buffalo. He's beating up cab drivers in Buffalo.
I was just about to say, like, for the sake of cab drivers in Buffalo, I want to say no to this.
I think it's a great fit.
I think that's definitely more of a summer move. I think that's a free agent signing in the summer. I don't see why Buffalo's going to pay this fee. You know, like I said, it's probably going to be a first in prospect when you can just wait a couple months. It's not like Buffalo's doing anything this season anyways, right? Like they don't need him for the last, 20, 30 games. But
just think of Patrick Kane to Tage.
Well, next season though. And again, like if he can take his hometown discount. Isn't he from Buffalo? He's like New York, somewhere in there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm like, I definitely see that in the summer. I don't like. There's no point of making that move right now. It'd be like the Habs are linked to Pierre-Luc Dubois again, and it's like there's just no point of making that move right now, unless whoever Winnipeg's GM has like a brain aneurysm and wants to trade him for nothing. Like sure, like I won't say no to that, but for the fee that they're going to want for him, like the price, it's just not worth it at this point. We don't need him for that bit. The Blackhawks don't, or the Sabres don't need him for the last half of the season here.
Yeah. I guess you're right. So I guess the where both of us stand on that is we both believe he'll be that guy. Like if he goes somewhere to a contender, he'll be that guy. But it has to be 100%. A contender.
Yeah, and there's no point of him not moving to a contender at 34 years old. Like, with this being the last year of his deal, like,
yeah,
Any other names on the trade bait board have your eye? Not just in terms of Leafs, but just where you want to see him go.
Nothing crazy. There's not really too much going on. All of the big names are already really gone. Like I think Jakob Chychrun does lead. He's on the top of that trade bait board, followed by a guy like Gavrikov. I like Ivan Barbashev in St. Louis. Pardon?
The TSN board has Timo Meier first, and then Chychrun and Gavrikov.
But I forgot about Timo Meier. I keep hearing it. I keep seeing it. I think it would be a smart move for this team. I think the New Jersey Devils should go after him.
Yeah.
The only thing that scares me about Timo Meier is he's going to be due on his RFA deal like $10.5 million. I don't feel comfortable giving him that much money.
I mean, I think if you're a team like New Jersey and you can surround him with those good young players that they have, it might work out. You know what I mean? Like they have the young pieces around him.
Yeah, but all of those guys are going to need contracts at some point as well. That's the way I think about it. Is like your Jesper Bratz, your Jack Hughes, I think is signed for sure. Jack Hughes is signed. Who else is over there that's just been lighting it up this year? Bratt.
Everyone, man. Their whole team's on fire.
Palat's been there. He's been very good for them.
Yeah.
Mercer's been very good for them. Sharon Govich has been very good for them. They've got a lot of guys that are going to be due money. So that worries me about trading for a guy like Timo Meier. But
and I think Timo Meier's
a hell of a player, and it'll help them immensely in that Metropolitan Division trying to make it into the play, like out of the first and second rounds.
Yeah, because I think that's a big thing on Timo Meier is that he wants an extension wherever he goes. Like he doesn't want to be a free agent. That's part of his kind of demand.
Yeah.
So I mean, that kind of hampers that a little bit. But I think the other big name that kind of gets me going here is Erik Karlsson. I want to see where he ends up. And I think it's going to be similar to Patrick Kane in terms of the cap, because he is a $11.5 million cap hit.
Yeah.
So not a lot of teams that can afford that, but like.
Yeah, and we don't have to get into how dumb the cap is, but we've done it before. We'll do it again. We'll just touch on it and say the cap is dumb.
Yeah.
And it prevents fun things from happening. That's the best way to describe the cap. Anyway, what's the schedule looking like in Montreal this week?
So we've got the New Jersey Devils tomorrow night in New Jersey, and then we're going to Philadelphia to play the Flyers, and then we're back at home on Saturday to play the Ottawa Senators.
Very good, very good. Yeah, it's another slow week for the Leafs. They don't have a Saturday night game. They play tomorrow in Buffalo, 7:30, followed by Friday at home hosting the Minnesota Wild, and then another Sunday game. But we'll get you an episode before. It'll probably drop at the same time as the game starts, actually. The game is at 7 p.m. in Seattle, so it'll be an afternoon game on the West Coast, but a nighttime game for the Leafs, so that's interesting. That'll be fun. Excited.
All right. Anything else you need to get off your chest, Dave?
I think this week I have everything off of my chest. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to the Game Entertainment and Media, as always, for hosting our product on your platform. Go check us out on all our socials, at Bitter Rivals Pod and at Bitter Rivals Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, at Maple Leafs BRP for your Maple Leafs content on Twitter. And check out the YouTube channel. Just search up the name, Bitter Rivals Podcast, and you will find it. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you for episode 86 next week.